Welcome to episode 3, Voices of the Learning Network. My name is Erin. I am your sparkly host today. Today we have a really interesting topic and one that I think is extremely timely. But before we get into our topic, I do want to introduce my co-podcaster today. I am absolutely delighted, humbled, and excited to have Fiona McBride joining me. Fiona McBride owns Fiona McBride Consulting. She is a learning development consultant and has been so for the past 10 years, freelancing through facilitation, coaching, and just all around being a voice of what learning should be, and all around just a great person. So today we're going to talk about Human Up. That's right. We are listening, learning, and growing as we're creating something that's new. And when we talk about learning, it's time to human up. So Fiona, first question, why learning?
Why learning? Hello. Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. Why learning? So why learning for me? Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't have like a neat kind of parceled up response for you, Erin, honestly. I've always loved helping people. I think that's something that's kind of come out as I was, kind of growing and, did a lot of volunteering when I was younger, still do. And I nearly went to university and did an event management degree. And then I thought, actually, no, I'm going to stay more local in Brighton in the UK. And I'm going to do business and personnel. And then all of the modules I did were looking at things around personal development, skills development, supporting others, right? And I've then stayed in that space. So there's just something about being there alongside somebody in some capacity and, helping them move forward, I guess, or explore something, and if we put this in the workplace context, do something more effectively in work. Does that make sense?
It completely does.
It's not a neat one though, is it? It's not a neat answer.
But it's never a neat answer. That's what I'm learning. The more I ask that question, it's never a neat answer. And I love that you attached learning with volunteering and helping not only people grow, but organizations grow. I think that's the core of learning. So it's very neat. Very neat. So Fiona, today our topic is Human Up. And the basis of this little fun phrase is, how do we put the human back into learning?
It's a big question. So thank you for that. I have had coffee this morning. And it's one that I've been reflecting on quite a lot since you asked me to join you here on the podcast. And I found kind of part of the question phrasing interesting, that back into, right? You said, how do we put back into learning? And it got me thinking, are we finding that we've come away then from that personalized, real, practical learning opportunities, or however you want to describe them, experience? And I was thinking back through my work so far, and I think I'm quite fortunate that I've always done my best to keep the learner, the person, really center and focused, and within my work and how I design my work, building in those checking opportunities. Mm-hmm. That's checking with myself and checking with other people to make sure that the other things kind of come in, or we go out of focus on actually the real need,
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about the need, because oftentimes in learning, it's, I'm teaching you how to gown, I'm teaching you compliance, I am teaching you, how to use Oracle. And I think that's where I find so much we're losing the human and we're losing the need, because it's just a checkbox. But the fact of the matter is, that's a perfect touch point because it's so vital to what they do on a daily basis. So when we think about this, even in terms of the worst training, compliance training, what would you do if, for an organization? How would you bring the human back in? How would you build connection from the get-go?
I think that's the key word right there. That actually, you just said it's about noticing the connection. I think there's a piece in this, isn't there, about how we design something, that learning experience, that experience for someone or a group of people, and then also what happens in the moment then when people are engaging with that experience. So it feels like there's many layers to this for me. And if we're talking about online, then there's an element of different design kind of methodology around that. And if we're talking about in person, a whole other load of kind of design methodology comes in. And I think so it's that pre-work that's really important, to start to think about the individuals we're trying to support and help to grow and develop and have behavior shifts, or and then to really, again, it's going back to that point of that checking in along the way, that we're sticking to what we first identified the need to be. And so for me, within that, there's many conversations, there's lots of asking of questions, there's lots of listening, and there's lots of listening to what is being said and what isn't being said, and being curious. Part of my job is to be curious, and sometimes I call it being nosy, but curious often sounds better. Because there are many things to take into account, aren't there? There's the environment, there's the individuals, their contexts, context, of the group. If you're looking at a group of individuals who are within one organization, or if they're coming from many organizations. So there's these different layers that we need to pay attention to. And I want to say time, like this takes time, but I know for a lot of people that's a luxury. So I think that's where my hesitancy is in saying taking our time to get, to create something that then is valuable, and means that individual, those people are really at the center of what we're trying to offer and create.
I think this is my perspective. So sometimes we have to take a long time in the beginning and forget short-term wins, because in the long term, we'll have created such a strong foundation that you can put anything on top of that. And I think that may be a shift that we need to think about, because giant in the room, elephant in the room, we have AI. And AI potentially could make development very easy. So we could actually spend time creating the foundation, which is where you need the human. And so since I mentioned it, how do we combine AI and the human? Do you think they're going to be competing forces? What's your projection?
Crikey. Right now, where I'm at with it is, I feel that it has a place and it's really useful, and it's another tool within our toolkit, right? So with my work and the work I do with my clients, that tool, the tool of AI, and how I can utilize it for myself and for them and together with them, is amazing, because it's another tool. But again, it's that, where does that come in the design methodology? Like, when do I just jump to AI because it's there and it's new? Well, it's not new because it's been around for ages, but it's louder, isn't it now?
Yeah.
Do I kind of jump there first, or do I again take my time and then see it as one of many resources, tools techniques I can pull on to enhance that learning kind of experience and offer for someone? But it's definitely something we need to be paying attention to, for sure. And I was at a conference earlier in the year, and somebody was on stage talking about AI. They've been talking about it for 20 years, but like I said, now it's louder. People are going, oh, okay, right, so tell me more about that. Oh, really? So for many people in our network, in our profession, they'll have been using it really well for a while, right? And using it effectively and usefully, and it'll add value. But again, I see it as part of the pot. It's one of many kind of tools in my work.
Well, since you mentioned conferencing, for years now, since 2020, we've all been online and we've been creating all of these digital solutions, and we've very, very quickly learned how to interact via screens. But now we have the opportunity to go back to conferencing, to go back to face to face. So, talk to me a little bit about how you feel now we can take lessons learned from our virtual world and make conferencing face to face, facilitating ILT even more impactful.
I think there's something about really utilizing the time we spend in those spaces well, because before it's a big ask, isn't it? If it's a 2-day conference, which typically big conferences are, they usually go over a day. That's a lot of someone's time to step away to attend that. It's a lot of money in some cases, because it's a cost of being there and the travel and accommodation perhaps. So there's something about making it matter, making it be a valuable space to be in, which I think we have shifted, and I think we're shifting a bit more recently into that experience, and how can we help people get the best experience then when they are there, because it is amazing to sit in a workshop or a session at a conference and hear from an individual or two on different topics and hear like latest research, data, insight. That is amazing, but also it's the things that are in between those that are important too, right? That connection. And I think again, with conferencing and with big events, I come back to it's the connections that we can make, and that's the personal ones for our self-development, our professional development, but it's also connections with regards to making sense of where we're at with our work. And I don't know if that makes sense, but if you come away for a day or a 2-day conference, you've changed the pace of your week, haven't you? Because you've stepped away from your usual day. And so how can you, or it's about, can you make the most then of connecting with where you're at and what you're hearing? And we know the brain needs space and to slow down every so often to sense make and to be creative. So I suppose that comes into it for me. The connection about being with other people is very valuable, but also that making connection and sense making.
I love how you brought up to the space between, because I think I've always taken that for granted. Go to these conferences, session based, keynote based, and the space in between, we always just assumed was there. And once it wasn't, we lost so much of those rich conversations you had from point A to point B, where you did download with others, where you talked about, what did you think? And I think it was just so taken for granted. And now those spaces in between are just as important as the space that we're working and we're listening and we're actively engaged. And so I think as people approach conference season, let's be mindful of that and actively seek out those spaces in between.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate that some people will need to go away and find their own space and be on their own, right, and have downtime. So that's all completely great too. But you're right. Then when we feel like refueled, whatever the word is, re-energized, to then go, hang on, there's a whole bunch of people right now in the same building as me that I may never meet again or have the opportunity to talk with and pick their brains. So maybe even for like one of the coffee breaks, I'll make sure I have 15 minutes to go and talk to someone completely random, and it's usually in the coffee queue, isn't it? It's like usually waiting for the lunch. But it's a really beautiful thing, because I think that how we're talking about that, how we've described that's the humanness. That's then the connection even more. Because I know many speakers in conferences will say, turn to the person next to you, what's your thoughts on a question? They might put something up on the screen, and that's brilliant. Like even that, like quick engagement is helpful. But yes, the spaces, the gaps where we can go, there are other humans, and I can explore this. I don't have to be on my own, I don't have to go back to my organization with all this stuff that's now in my head. I can explore it while I'm here, and I love that, seeing people huddled around with stand-up tall tables where you stand up and you have to, with your coffee cup, juggling all your notebooks and things.
Well, the other thing I heard from you is pace. So when we do go to conferences, or even when we have, face-to-face trainings, it changes the pace of our week. And so we can't always go to conferences every week, although maybe some of us wish we could. How in your daily practice are you changing the pace so that you're always making sure that you're focusing on the human? And maybe this is in your own practice, maybe this is as you're working with clients, but how do you focus on pace?
Yeah, I love this question, so thank you. And I think it's a really important one. And for the last 3-4 years, maybe, I've definitely been more aware of that, about how quickly I'm working or how quickly I'm jumping from one thing to the next. And even in my, learning design or in my work with my clients, it's definitely more now at the forefront of my mind. One of those reasons being that I qualified as a yoga teacher in 2019. So there's a whole thing in here for me about reflective practice. And reflective practice has always been in my learning and development world. And I've been really fortunate to go on a number of workshops and do more of that myself, and also learn how to help others do it. So, as a coach and as a mentor, facilitator, I think it's really important. But as a yoga teacher, it's kind of then smashed up these two worlds together in a really nice way. So I don't know what you think, but I think people struggle with slowing down a little bit. I don't think it's the easiest thing to do. And I'm not saying that with any judgment, because I feel that myself, especially when the demands on our lives are quite high with work and home, etc., and that balance. So I'll do my best personally to have little reflective pauses in my day, and sometimes they might be all of 1 or 2 minutes. So it's not even anything fancy or technical. It's literally 5 minutes in my diary. Get up, move away from my desk, and just, even if it's like walk up and down the stairs or around the block. So it can be that simple. To other kind of activities like asking myself some reflective questions, or the journaling piece, so that I usually give a bit longer to. And then as a learning and development person, I've definitely become braver in building that into my design of workshops, of sessions, of coaching, of facilitation work that I do. And again, because I know people can get quite uncomfortable, or it feels really different for a lot of people, I keep it short and sweet. So it will be we're going to pause here. We've got 1 minute, just take a breath. And again, it's not fancy, it's not complicated, it's not a technique or a complicated tool of reflection I have to explain to anyone. And then I try and grow the duration of those pauses throughout, say, the day or the session. So then it might become 2 minutes, and then it might be 5, and then it might be at the end of the day and it's longer. So I think there's something about little and often is important, and then doing it in a way where people feel they're still getting value. That's where I kind of land with that.
I love it. And I think as a fellow freelancer, it's so hard in my own practice to slow down. And so I love this approach of, early and often. So just start with 30 seconds, start with one question, start with one moment where you walk away and you don't have a chore to do. And that's the other thing, as we work at home. Now we not only have to do our work, but now we have to do the laundry too. That was something I didn't have to do when I went to the office. So I love that idea of being very purposeful in your diary and saying, this is a time that's 5 minutes for me, and this is a time that's for my learners. Here's a minute for you, because it is very important for our brain to stop and to think. So as we're closing up the podcast, Fiona, what would you like our listeners to know about you, about learning, something they could take away, a nugget that they could kind of chomp on today and say, oh, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to share that. And I know I put you completely on the spot, but
Okay, yeah, you have. Wow, because that feels like a really big thing. It's like, what really insightful thing?
Oh no.
I,
You're very, very small thing. And you know, it's the small things, it's the small spaces that make the most difference. So that's even more pressure.
yeah, I think I don't have a neat. There's obviously a theme coming out with me. I don't have a neat kind of boxed thing, but I suppose if people are struggling to find that time to slow it down just a bit. I'm not talking about anything dramatic, but if people, if people are kind of saying they're listening maybe now and they're thinking, oh yeah, that's all well and good, but my days are crazy, then my little bit of an idea might be, well, when you do have the breaks, because we're not robots, right? So we need to eat and we need to make a drink or get a glass of water or something. So when those natural breaks come in that we allow ourselves to have, what if we make the best of those times? So, okay, even if you only have 20 minutes for a lunch break, if you might not get an hour, how can you make the best of those 20 minutes to really slow down and disconnect and allow yourself to just take a minute, and allow your brain to catch up and allow the thinking to happen and the dots and the connections to be made, and the ideas maybe to start to percolate. That might be my thing. So if you struggle to build in like reflective practice, or you struggle to take a pause, or it doesn't feel like right now that's a thing you can do, when you do have a break in your day, what about leaving the phone next to the laptop and just purely switching off just for a bit, or doing something a bit different, noticing something happening outside, or go for a walk around the block for your 2 minutes or whatever. I don't know what you think, but that just feels like make the most of what we have, maybe is my thing.
I think I'm taking it away. I'm chopping on it. I think it's a challenge. I think that is a challenge to our listeners. Put down the phone, pick up a book, go on a walk, pet the cat, feed the turtle, whatever it might be. But truly disconnect. I think, and I try it once. That's the challenge. Try it once.
Yeah.
See how it feels. See if it's different, and if it works, try it again. I think that I love that. I love that approach.
And there's lots of other kind of physical ways to slow down, and other ways you can build it in personally or within your facilitation, your learning design. And I'm always happy to talk about those things, because I've been looking into it now for a good few years. So yeah, I'm always happy to share kind of other ideas, and I can put some links perhaps into the show notes for you of a couple of those that are out there already on the internet, for people to have a look at, because they do add a lot of value. So I think it's worth just exploring a little bit.
I love it. And we're going to not only have those links in our show notes, but we're going to have the links to Fiona's contact information, so you can contact Fiona, you can learn more about her and what she does. And don't forget, as we talked about conferences, our Learning Network conference, Connect 2023, is coming up. Get tickets now, because pretty soon they will be sold out and you will not get the opportunity to go. This is a one-day conference. It is a chance to connect with people like Fiona. Have those moments where you can ask her questions and pick her brain and get more nuggets, so that your life has really become, and your learning has really become, a little bit more humanized. And so with that, Fiona, what a great conversation to start my day. Thank you so much for joining us. I literally am going to go out and do something. I am like, okay, 7:30 US time, I just need to go take a walk. And you have absolutely inspired me. I loved it. Here is our Minute with feature. Today we have a minute with Andrew. Andrew, let's hear your minute.
Thanks, Erin. I've been a Learning Network director for 3 years now, I think it is, and first became aware of the Learning Network many years ago. But I never joined because I didn't know what value it was going to add for me. When I did join, I suddenly realised there was loads of people who knew loads of stuff who could help me do my job better, and then wondered why I hadn't been involved in the network before. Since being a director and looking at mentoring, what I found is the level of understanding and knowledge of our profession is immense. And I would highly recommend people, one, join the network, but two, then consider becoming a director as well, just to understand how they can help support the learning industry in a better way.
Perfect.
Oh, hang on. Fiona here again. Just a suggestion. What if now, when you finish listening to us on this podcast, you pop your phone down, take a look out the window, go for a little walk, try and find that minute to slow down, to reflect.
So thank you so much for joining us. Thank all of our listeners for joining us on our journey. Remember, speak up, speak out. It is our voice that gives us our power. And thank you so much for joining us today.